to help local groups overcome. We want hackerspaces to be open and inviting to everybody in the community. I mean, that's critical if hackerspaces are going to forward the goals of bringing this community, making it more productive, and giving hackers a good name. When I say I work for the Hacker Foundation and I'm talking to another corporate suit on a flight, they say like, well, who was Mr. Hacker? I'm like, no, hacker, like in the sense of computer hacker. And they say, wait, hackers have a foundation? You can get money for that? And I mean, this is one of the reasons I wear a suit. If I was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, the guy would put his headphones on and not talk to me for the rest of the flight.
That's my problem.
Right. But at least...
Really, it is.
Yeah. But at least wearing a suit, I can talk to him and I can sort of say, no, hackers are not bad people. The problem is that in the United States, the word hacker, in common parlance, is a synonym for computer criminal.
Take the power back.
I personally believe that hackers are not automatically bad people. But the problem is that in the U.S.
Wait a second. Let's roll that one back. So, Nick, tell me what you think about the word hacker and how it doesn't automatically mean criminal.
Go sit down. Okay. But no, seriously, I think that people who have everything to fear for what hackers do and how they apply their creative ingenuity, the people who have nothing to gain from that have co-opted the term hacker in the public parlance to be a synonym for computer criminal. We're trying to take the term back and to tell people in the U.S. what hacker really means. And one of the best ways to do this is to do good works. That's why the Hacker Foundation exists, is to bring the hacker community in the United States forward and achieve the same kind of recognitions that hackers have in Europe. When somebody says hacker in Europe, they don't think, oh, well, hackers are computer criminals. They understand that there is that unavoidable to it. But they also understand that hackers are creative people. Hackers are people that think in ways that the average person does not think, and they use that thinking to do good things. They use that thinking for free speech. They use that thinking to point out where there are flaws in products that everybody uses. That hackers are good. But that was a little bit of an aside. While these cons are really great and while face-to-face interaction is good, you can't do everything online, collaborate in all the ways that, there is an advantage to face-to-face communication. Hacker cons are limited. They're for 3 days, everybody shows up, everybody does really great stuff, and then everybody leaves. And I think people have a hard time taking the networks and taking the connections and taking the things that they learn at HackerCons and applying it when they go back home, which is why we think hackerspaces are necessary. A third type of hacker group space, and sort of a variant, sort of a subset of the hacker that we're doing, is a hacker group living situation. If you look at the history of hackers in this country, there have been a lot of different hacker group living situations. You don't see it so commonly right now, but it's basically what it is. A bunch of hackers rent an apartment, they rent a loft, they get together, and while that is their primary living space, their primary residence, because they're all hackers and they all live together, they end up working on projects, they end up sharing, they end up collaborating in that living space. But you really wouldn't want to open up some place that you live, your house, to any hacker out there in the community, which is why the hackerspace that we're talking about is necessary. When we say hackerspace in the hackerspace initiatives, we're talking about a fixed, non-residential research space. In Europe, the Chaos Computer Club is probably the best example of this. The Chaos Computer Club is a network of regional groups, and most of these regional groups occupy a space in their local community, and they use that space to collaborate on projects. Another kind of hackerspace in Berlin, C-Base, is a hacker, artist, collective that also happens to be a club. I mean, if there was a way that we could possibly get someplace like C-Base in the United States, that would be just absolutely incredible. And that's a really great way that they interact with their outside community. C-Base on the top level is a club. It's a nightclub like any other nightclub that you've been to. They have a bar, they offer food, and they open to the public to invite people in. But below C-Base, you have a really large basement. You have a recording studio down there. They have a computer lab. They have many, many different things. I strongly encourage you to check out, is it cbase.d? Oh, it's cbase.org, c/base.org. Another hackerspace which we're looking at in modeling hackerspaces in HSI is MetaLab in Vienna, Austria. It's another open, collaborative workspace that's an intersection between artists and hackers out there. This is the kind of thing that we're trying to do with HSI, to try to bring back what they're doing in Europe and make it happen here.
But in our own,
What-
but in our own special American way.
Right.
'Cause we're not Germans.
You know, as you can see from this map, most of the hackerspaces that have achieved some, semblance of notoriety in the national consciousness are along the quote-unquote three coasts: the East Coast, the West Coast, and Chicagoland area, which is commonly referred to as the Third Coast. And as you see, the spaces have come, they've gone. Hasty Pastry, which is in Boston. Loft started in Boston. Members of the Loft moved to New Hack City and San Francisco on the West Coast. I forgot to mention, the prototype hackerspace, the hackerspace that we're using to test out a lot of the theories that we've been developing over the past couple of months, is going to be in Washington, D.C. And this ties back to something that the CCC does in Berlin. The CCC's headquarters in Berlin is located very close to the Reichstag, which is the seat of the government for Germany. And because of that proximity, they're able to do a lot of things on a political level, collect sorts of things, advocate for hackers in a certain way, not necessarily forward overtly political things like candidates for office and different things like that, but that proximity to government helps influence things and influence different procedures, ways that government does work, to make life better and to allow hackers to contribute back to the community and to the country as a whole.
One of the members was an ICANN director.
Yeah, no, one of the CCC members is an ICANN director. Yeah.
By the way, this that little map there, we know it's not comprehensive, and if you have locations on there, tell me about them, because besides being a really handy map, it also serves as a bit of historical record.
Yeah, actually, this would be a good time to sort of take a break real quickly and just show you. Most of the stuff that we're talking about right here is in the Hacker Foundation wiki.
I could see it in your computers anyway, so I know you're looking
Yeah,
at it.
everything that we're talking about in this speech and a lot of the theories that we're developing, sort of things that we're learning from you out here, is all right here in the Hackerspaces Initiative wiki. I strongly recommend that if you're interested in hackerspaces, in the theory and developing things and questions, to go to the wiki, talk on the talk page, look at different things. If you've had an experience that fits in with the theory, write about it. Find the space that it works, share that with the rest of the community. If there's something that you disagree with, open it up on the talk page. We're not saying that we're experts on this. We're still learning.
Decorating tips.
HSI is HSI right now is very much in the research phase, and we need your help to perform that research. And actually, while I have this open, if you want to see what we're doing in our plans for Hacker Foundation's presence at the CCC camp, the other end of Hackers on a Plane, that's all here in the CCC events wiki. We strongly encourage you to look at that, and of course, the Hacker Foundation webpage, hackerfoundation.org. But getting back to the, oh, I'm in the wrong workspace.
Broken. It's broken.
It's not broken. Okay. And, sort of moving into more about U.S. hackerspaces, in looking at these things, we've identified 5 typical phases, like the life cycle for the average U.S. hackerspace. First phase, birth. Typically, most hackerspaces in the United States, you start off with a strong leadership core. You start off with somebody that happens to have resources, that's the leader of a group that can aggregate resources, that says, hey, wouldn't it be great if we had our own hacker lab? They get together, they talk with their friends, and they say, yeah, hacker lab, that'd be a really great idea.
Sweet.
So that one person, acting as an individual, goes, finds a space, signs a lease, and takes responsibility for it. Once the space is occupied, he and the group of friends that he had starting out with, get in the space and they start doing stuff. They're like, oh, wow, all these things that I was doing in my basement by myself, I can do with my 5 friends. I can leave my computers here. We can share all of our different equipment. It's great. Hackerspace, maybe year 1, year 2 in, more people in the community find out about it. Maybe they've thrown a couple of parties. Maybe all of those members that walked into it have invited all of their friends and saying, hey, look at my cool space. And then in the community, that hackerspace achieves some kind of notoriety. That maybe they've held a couple events. They say, hey, a lot of people know about it. A lot of people really like this space. Let's do more for that. And then it sort of reaches a critical mass at some point.
Drama sets in. You know about the drama. We all know about the drama.
Right. Drama sets in. And because there was no formal organization going into it, it was just one person signing a lease to share a space with a group of friends.
Taking all the risk.
Taking all the risk. the phase starts with some sort of leadership crisis, that maybe that one person has a falling out or some kind of bad incident with another one of the members. And then that creates tension that draws everybody else who's in that space into it.
And then Boing Boing and Wired get involved.
Yeah, right.
Step 3.5.
You know, I'm,
Yes.
yeah, you get the electric bill. You know,
Right. Something happens that ignites a crisis that sort of shakes the leadership foundation, the stuff that made that space work. The leadership crisis, typically what happens, this has happened in Boston, I saw this happen in New Hack City when I was living in San Francisco. The person who had their name on the lease just doesn't renew it. And then he passes it off to somebody else. He says, you know, I'm sick and tired of this. This used to be a lot of fun. It's not fun anymore. I'm out. Here are the keys. See ya. Someone else takes over. But somebody who didn't have that experience of going out, dealing with commercial landlords, paying the electric bill, all these different things, ends up learning the process. You know, and they learn the process by collection notices. They learn the process by bad phone calls from the landlord.
the man comes for a visit.
PG&E goes in, some random telco guy comes in, sees that's obviously a hackerspace, and then concludes that that's the problems that he's having in that entire CLEC. This actually happened in San Francisco. And, you know, it's a cry for help. The person's like, I can't believe that, you know, that they could actually make this work. This doesn't happen. And so that person gives up. Maybe one more person tries to take over for him, but eventually you get into the last phase, the hackerspace dies.
Oh.
Everybody takes whatever's equipment is in there, they vacate the space, they give it back to the landlord, and they get to keep the security deposit. We want to change that pattern, obviously. When you're organizing and thinking about a hackerspace that you might want to build in your community, don't think of it as a clubhouse. Think of it as something that you're going to operate as a public trust. And when I say public trust, I mean don't think of your hackerspace as your personal lab to share with your 5 friends. Think of it as a space, you know, where you and your friends, people that you haven't met yet, can come, collaborate, and contribute something. Can contribute something to the other hackers in your community, can contribute to hackers around the United States, can contribute to hackers around the world. You have to think of it. And if you want to start a space through the Hackerspaces Initiative, you have to think about it as a public trust. Just like many of the other nonprofit spaces that you may have interacted with, you have to think of it like that, as something that you're operating for the public good. Like a library, that's great. That's actually think of your hackerspace as a library, a shared community resource that you're there and operating for the good of the community.
But without dumb books in it.
Right.
I hate dumb books.
Okay, stop, right. Why, are you killing me? Yeah, I'm killing. Okay. When you go into it, be aware of why hackerspaces have died previously. Be aware of why we can't, in this country, seem to get a hackerspace that stays and is productive and good for 5 years. You have to think about, okay, I know I'm really great friends with all of my 5 people now, but what happens if, you know, one of my buddies starts dating my girlfriend? You know, what happens when drama happens? You have to set things up, and if you can make an arrangement of the people who are going to be the custodians of the space ahead of time so that you know what's supposed to happen if there's interpersonal conflict, you can avoid that interpersonal conflict from ruining the space. You have to have formal governance procedures. This is not a tremendously uncommon thing. People who do nonprofit work tend to experience a higher rate of interpersonal drama than people who are in a corporate environment. And you have to think about that, and you have to prepare for that, and you have to formalize. One of the things that HSI is going to do, we don't want to run your space. We want to help you run your space. And we're going to be there for you if something happens in the future. HSI plans on offering mediation services. We plan on offering corporate governance services. We're not going to leave you after you set up your space. And of course, HSI wants your space to share best practices and things that are, you know, if one hackerspace develops a really good way for accomplishing something, HSI wants to be able to share that with all of the other hackerspaces that are operating under HSI in the United States. And I think this is how we're going to avoid hackerspaces dying, and this is how we're going to make hackerspaces last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, just like they are in Europe. Okay, you might be asking, so how do I go about building my hackerspace? We've sort of broken down all of the long, long list of tasks that you need to accomplish to go out there, rent a commercial space, and operate as public good. First phase, organizing. This is critical. Hackerspaces in the United States, when they walk into it with a very base level of organization, the very minimal amount of stuff that they need to do to get the keys to a space. You can't do that. You have to organize. You have to